What if the first real sign of dementia wasn't memory loss, but how someone turns to face you when you call their name? You might think memory is the first to go. But what if your body knows before your mind does? Over 35% of seniors show early signs of dementia in how they walk, long before they forget a single name. It's not about aging or limping after a bad knee. Sometimes, the first warning isn't in what they forget, but in how they move. And most families miss it, until it's too late. Backhand index pointing right. That's why in this video, I'll show you 7 strange walking patterns that quietly reveal what the brain may be hiding. One of them might already be happening in your own home, and recognizing it early could change everything. Light bulb: if protecting your loved ones matters to you, hit that subscribe button now. This might be the most important video you watch all week. As someone who's worked with older adults for decades, I can tell you this: your body whispers, long before it ever screams. And one of the first whispers? It's in your walk. That gentle rhythm we all take for granted, it holds secrets. It's not just about aging. It's about the brain sending out quiet distress signals, through your posture, your pace, your balance. Often, your steps are telling a story your memory hasn't even begun to realize yet. Backhand index pointing right. So let's walk through this together. Step by step. Because once you know what to look for, you'll never see walking the same way again. Let's begin with the first silent signal. The way someone turns when you call their name. 1. Trouble turning while walking. Picture this: someone's walking across the room, then they're called from behind, and instead of pivoting smoothly, they pause, shuffle, and slowly make a wide turn. This isn't just them being careful, it may be their brain trying to recalibrate direction. See, when certain parts of the brain, like those that handle spatial planning and motor control, start to decline, even a simple turn becomes a complex task. The brain has to calculate space, adjust balance, and process timing. And when it struggles, the body delays or reroutes awkwardly. These slow, wide, or clumsy turns are like a GPS glitch. You ask for a left turn, and the system hesitates, reroutes, then responds too late. Watch closely for people who bump into corners, hesitate before turning, or struggle to orient themselves in tight spaces. The body may be compensating for what the brain can no longer do quickly. Backhand index pointing right. And here's something powerful: spotting these signs isn't about judging, it's about catching a quiet SOS. But what if the person doesn't turn at all? What if they just stop? Let's talk about that next. 2. Sudden stops or freezing mid-walk. You're walking through the house, maybe chatting or headed toward the kitchen, when suddenly, the person next to you stops cold. Not distracted. Not listening. Just stuck. This is known as a freezing gait. The legs freeze, as if the brain momentarily forgets how to keep walking. But here's the twist: it's not the muscles. It's the message. The signal from the brain is blocked. It might last only a few seconds at first, barely noticeable. But over time, it can grow longer and more frequent. And if it happens in a dangerous spot, say, on stairs, near a curb, or in the middle of a crosswalk, it can lead to serious injury. These freezes often happen when the person is trying to multitask, walking and talking, walking and thinking, walking and reacting. It's a breakdown in what doctors call executive function, the ability to plan and carry out actions. Freezing while walking is a major red flag for early neurological changes, including forms of dementia and Parkinson's-related conditions. Yellow circle. If you found even one insight helpful so far, drop a comment, and hit subscribe to support our channel. your support fuels better videos. Now, let's turn our attention to the arms. Yes, the arms. Because what they don't do can say just as much. 3. Uneven or reduced arm swing. Here's something subtle most people never notice. When we walk, our arms should swing naturally, opposite to each leg. It keeps us balanced and aligned. But when that swing disappears, especially on one side, it could mean something deeper is changing. Many people assume it's arthritis or shoulder pain. But if there's no pain and one arm swings noticeably less than the other, it may be a neurological flag. The brain isn't syncing both sides of the body evenly. One woman told us her husband stopped swinging his left arm. No pain. No injury. She didn't think much of it, just aging. But a few months later, he was diagnosed with early-stage dementia. That one small change was the only clue, and she almost missed it. This can be one of the earliest signs of a decline in motor coordination. And again, it's not about the arms being stiff, it's about the brain's inability to coordinate both sides smoothly. Watch how someone moves, not just their legs, but their whole body. A stiff arm, a limp side, a robotic rhythm, these are quiet messages. And when seen with other walking changes, they speak loudly. But what if the whole walk changes, soft, short steps that barely lift off the floor? What does that mean? That's next. 4. Shuffling steps or feet that barely leave the ground. We all know the sound. That gentle scraping, like slippers dragging across the floor. But what many don't realize is this isn't just tired legs or worn-out shoes. It's a neurological signal. When walking becomes short, stiff, and flat-footed, it's often called a shuffling gait. This isn't just associated with Parkinson's, it's seen in several types of cognitive decline. The problem isn't the legs, it's the breakdown in communication between brain and body. One daughter told us she noticed her dad's steps becoming quieter. He wasn't lifting his feet anymore, just shuffling around the house. She thought it was just fatigue. But looking back, it was the very first sign of the dementia that followed. Think of it like trying to dance to music that's fading in and out. Your body wants to move, but it can't hear the rhythm. This kind of walking makes everyday life more dangerous. Rugs become obstacles. Steps feel steeper. Confidence drops, and many seniors begin staying home, avoiding movement, losing strength fast. So don't ignore the shuffle. It's one of the brain's earliest warning lights. But what if just one foot is dragging, and there's no injury? That's a whole different clue. 5. Dragging one foot or walking unevenly. Now this one's even more subtle. If you notice one shoe wearing down more than the other, or if one foot consistently scuffs, it could mean the brain is struggling with one side of the body. This isn't about favoring a sore ankle. It's about asymmetry. One side of the brain might be signaling more weakly, leading to uneven coordination. Neurologists often describe it this way: the brain is like an orchestra conductor. If one arm stops giving cues, the violins may play on, but the cellos fall behind. The result? A performance that feels off. If dragging or limping happens consistently, without injury, it's time to look deeper. Especially when combined with any of the earlier signs. Now let's take it one step further. What if the walk itself has no clear destination? That's next, and it's something many families miss. 6. Wandering without clear direction. Have you seen someone pace a hallway at night? Or step outside, then forget why they went out? Maybe they wander into different rooms, then pause like they've forgotten the script. This kind of aimless walking often points to changes in spatial memory. It's not that they can't walk, it's that the brain has lost the why. A caregiver once told us she found her mother standing in the backyard barefoot at 2 a.m., confused, unsure why she went outside. No sleepwalking history. Just silent disorientation. These wandering moments are usually dismissed as restlessness or boredom. But the truth is, they reflect a deeper disorientation. The brain isn't connecting steps to purpose. It's like walking in a fog, each step taken, but the destination forgotten. Early wandering is one of the easiest signs to overlook, and one of the most important to catch. But there's one last pattern, and it might be the quietest, but it's also the one most linked to early dementia. Don't miss this. 7. Walking slower with unusual hesitation. Yes, we all slow down with age. But this is different. This is slowness with uncertainty. Pausing before crossing a doorway. Freezing before stepping down a curb. Moving like each step must be relearned. This hesitation shows that the brain is questioning its own decisions. It's not just being careful, it's being confused. Older adults who experience this kind of hesitation often do so more in unfamiliar environments. Their brain needs more time to process space, danger, and navigation. Think of it like the Wi-Fi slowing down, not just buffering, but trying to reconnect before loading the next move. And here's the thing, this may be the first physical sign the brain gives. It's easily misread as aging. But it's often the first spark of cognitive decline. Final thoughts and key takeaways. So, what's the lesson here? Brain 1. Listen to the body, especially when it moves differently. The way someone walks can whisper what the brain hasn't said out loud yet. Pay attention to the pauses, the pivots, the shuffle. They matter more than we realize. Brain 2. Don't confuse aging with warning signs. Yes, our pace changes as we age, but when that change includes hesitation, freezing, or loss of purpose, it's time to dig deeper. These signs are not just getting old. They are your opportunity to act early. Brain 3. Early action gives you options. The earlier cognitive changes are caught, the more you can do: therapy, nutrition, routine, brain-healthy habits. And most of all, dignity, independence, and connection can be preserved longer. Brain 4. Talk to loved ones, and talk to professionals. Share what you see. Don't wait for someone to forget your name, notice how they walk to you first. Brain 5. Build daily brain health now. Movement, memory games, good food, social connection, these are small daily habits that can add up to a major difference in how long your brain stays strong. Speech balloon: if this video spoke to you, please let us know. Like it. Share it with someone who needs to see it. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Senior Health Tips, where we break down complex health topics into clear, helpful advice for seniors and families. Thank you for watching. Stay strong, stay aware, and we'll see you in the next one, right here on Senior Health Tips.